Everyone said I had the perfect career, marriage, and life, but one quiet moment at my kitchen table exposed a truth I could no longer ignore. The strange thing about building the perfect life is how quiet it feels when it does not belong to you. From the outside, I did everything right. That is what people always say about me. Responsible, steady, disciplined. The kind of man you could count on to show up early and stay late. The kind of son who made his parents proud without causing trouble. The kind of husband who paid the mortgage on time and mowed the lawn every Saturday morning. I followed the path that was laid out in front of me like it had been drawn in permanent marker. In my early 20s, I had choices. Not wild ones. Just small forks in the road. I remember sitting in my college apartment with 2 acceptance letters on the kitchen table. One was for a graduate program in finance. Predictable. Safe. The other was for a design school in another state. That one made my chest feel lighter when I looked at it. It scared me too. No clear job path. No guarantee. My father came over that night. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He talked about stability, about benefits, about retirement accounts. He said creative passions were hobbies, not foundations for a life. I nodded along, telling myself he was right, that this was adulthood. I chose finance. Everyone approved. My mother cried when I landed my first job at a respectable firm downtown. My friends slapped me on the back when I bought my first suit that actually fit. My coworkers called me dependable within the first month. I like hearing that. Dependable. It felt solid. Every decision after that followed the same pattern. Promotion over relocation. Salary over flexibility. The safe neighborhood over the fixer-upper with character. I married a woman who made sense on paper. Smart. Kind. Organized. Our wedding photos looked like something out of a catalog. Balanced. Clean. Smiling faces angled toward a future that seemed obvious. There was never a dramatic moment where something felt terribly wrong. It was more like a faint hum in the background, a low static that never quite disappeared. In my late 20s, I would wake up some mornings before my alarm. The room would still be dark, my wife asleep beside me, the house quiet, and I would feel this strange distance, like I was watching someone else lie there in my place. I would think, this is what you wanted. This is what you worked for. Then I would get up, shower, knot my tie, and step back into the role. The milestones kept coming. The corner office. The bigger house. The second car. At every step, someone congratulated me. My father shook my hand when I made partner. He said he always knew I would build something solid. My mother told her friends about me like I was proof that she had done everything right. I smiled in every photo. But sometimes, during meetings, while someone droned on about quarterly projections, I would catch my reflection in the glass wall of the conference room. I would see a man nodding at the right moments, jotting down notes, asking practical questions. Competent, calm, and completely absent. I told myself it was just stress, that everyone feels this way, that fulfillment comes later, after everything is fully in place, after the next goal, after the next box is checked. Last month, I stood in my kitchen at 6 in the morning, staring at the coffee machine as it dripped into the pot. Same routine, same mug, same view of the trimmed lawn outside the window. And for the first time, the hum in the background got louder. Loud enough that I finally could not pretend it was not there. And that was when something small happened. Something no one else would have noticed. But it stopped me cold. I have not told anyone about it. Not yet. It was not a disaster. Not a fight. Not a dramatic phone call. It was a sketch. My daughter, Emma, had left it on the kitchen counter the night before. She is 8 years old and draws constantly. Unicorns. Dogs. Our house. Me. Her mother. Crayon versions of our very normal life. I picked up the paper while the coffee dripped. She had drawn our family standing in front of the house. The roof was bright red. The sun was huge and smiling. My wife had long yellow hair, even though it is brown. Emma always makes things brighter than they are. And there I was. Suit. Tie. Briefcase. No face. She had drawn my body in careful detail. The watch I wear. The sharp shoulders of my jacket. Even the little line where my hair parts on the side. But where my face should have been, there was just a blank oval. At first I thought maybe she had not finished it. Maybe she got distracted. But when I turned the page over, she had written something in pencil. Dad is at work. That was it. Not dad. Not my dad. Just that sentence. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that empty space where my eyes and mouth were supposed to be. My wife came into the kitchen a few minutes later. She kissed my cheek, asked if I was leaving early. I held up the drawing and asked if Emma had said anything about it. She laughed softly and said Emma always draws me like that. Said it is her work mode. Work mode. Like I am a setting. A switch that flips on and off. I folded the paper and put it back down. I told myself I was overthinking it. Kids draw weird things all the time. Still, the hum in the background got sharper. At the office that day, I moved through everything automatically. Morning briefing. Budget review. Lunch at the same place I have gone to for 3 years. Turkey sandwich. No mayo. Side salad. Sparkling water. The waiter does not ask anymore. He just nods when I sit down. As I chewed, I watched people walking past the window. A couple arguing. A guy in paint-splattered jeans talking animatedly on the phone. A woman laughing too loudly at something her friend said. They all looked messy. Alive. I felt organized. That night, after dinner, Emma asked me if I could help her with a school project. It was about what you want to be when you grow up. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, papers spread out around her. She asked me what I wanted to be when I was her age. The question caught me off guard. I almost said something safe, something polished. Instead, before I could stop myself, I told her I used to want to design album covers. I do not even know why that came out. I had not said that out loud in years. Maybe decades. I remembered being 17, staying up late with a sketchbook under my bed, drawing logos for imaginary bands, redesigning real ones in my own style. I used to lose hours doing that. Emma's eyes lit up. She asked if I still do it. I told her no. I said that was a long time ago. She nodded like that made sense. Like of course adults stop doing the things they love. Later that night, after everyone went to bed, I found myself in the garage. There are boxes stacked against the back wall. Old college stuff. Things I have not touched since we moved into this house. I do not know what I was looking for exactly, but I found it. A thin black portfolio case, dusty along the edges. My hands hesitated before I opened it. Inside were sketches. Dozens of them. Some rough. Some detailed. Logos. Illustrations. Bold colors that had faded a little with time. On the inside cover, in my own handwriting, were the words, "Make something that feels real." I sat down on the cold concrete floor and flipped through page after page. I could barely recognize the person who made them. He was not careful. He was not thinking about quarterly returns or safe investments. He was not worried about what would look good on a resume. He was experimenting, risking bad ideas. Trying again. I checked the time. It was past midnight. I had a presentation in the morning. An important one. A deal that could expand our firm into another state. Something that, on paper, would be a major achievement. I closed the portfolio and put it back in the box. I told myself it was nostalgia. Everyone has it. But when I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt that distance again. Stronger now. Like I was living a life that had been carefully assembled piece by piece. And somewhere along the way, I had quietly removed myself from it. The next morning, I walked into that presentation room, and something happened that I had not planned for. Something small. Something that no one else seemed to notice. But it changed the way I saw everything. And I have not been able to shake it since. I did not forget my lines. That is the strange part. I knew the numbers. I knew the projections. I knew exactly when to pause and when to shift slides. I had rehearsed it in the mirror the night before, adjusting my tie between practice runs. From the outside, the presentation went perfectly. But halfway through, while I was explaining a long-term growth strategy, I heard my own voice, and it did not sound like mine. It sounded rehearsed, polished, hollow. I caught my reflection in the glossy surface of the conference table. My mouth was moving. My hands were gesturing in controlled, precise motions. But my eyes looked tired. Not physically tired. Not the kind you fix with sleep. Disconnected. For a split second, the image of Emma's drawing flashed in my mind. That blank oval where my face should have been. And I lost my place. It was only for a heartbeat. A tiny pause. One of the senior partners cleared his throat, and I picked right back up. No one else reacted. No one frowned. No one asked if I was all right. Afterward, they congratulated me. Strong delivery. Confident tone. Solid vision. One of the newer analysts even said he hoped to present like me someday. I smiled and told him he would get there. But as I walked back to my office, I felt like I had just watched someone else perform a role I knew by heart. I closed the door and sat down in my leather chair. The office is exactly what it should be. Framed degrees on the wall. A clean desk. A window overlooking the city skyline. It is the kind of space I once pictured as success. I spun the pen between my fingers and tried to remember the last time I felt excited about anything related to this job. Not proud, not satisfied, excited. Nothing came to mind. That afternoon, I received an email from Human Resources reminding me to confirm my attendance at the annual leadership retreat. 3 days at a resort. Workshops, golf, strategic planning sessions. 10 years ago, I would have felt honored. Now, I stared at the screen and felt nothing. On the drive home, traffic crawled like it always does. I sat in the same lane I sit in every weekday at 5:30, listening to the same news station. The host talked about markets and policy shifts. I imagined turning the wheel suddenly. Not crashing, not doing anything reckless. Just taking a different exit. Driving somewhere without a plan. The thought startled me. I have never been impulsive. I pride myself on that. I do not deviate from schedules. I do not make sudden changes. I stayed in my lane. When I pulled into the driveway, Emma was playing in the yard. She waved when she saw my car. I waved back. That night, my wife talked about repainting the guest room. A neutral color. Something safe that would appeal to buyers eventually. We have already been discussing resale value, even though we have only lived here for 3 years. I nodded at the right moments. Later, after everyone went to bed, I found myself in the garage again. I pulled the portfolio back out. This time, instead of just flipping through it, I took one of the sketches and brought it inside. I sat at the kitchen table under the dim light and studied it. It was messy, imperfect, but it had energy. On impulse, I grabbed a pen and began adding to it. Just small lines at first. Adjusting a curve, deepening a shadow. Hours passed without me noticing. When I finally looked up, the clock read 2:30 in the morning. For the first time in a long while, I did not feel detached. I felt focused, alive in a way that was unfamiliar but not foreign. The next day at work, I was exhausted. During a meeting, someone asked my opinion on a proposal. I realized I had not been listening. My mind had drifted back to the kitchen table, to the way the ink had moved across the paper. I answered anyway. Automatically. Logically. The meeting moved on. But something had shifted. That night, as I pulled into the driveway again, I saw a car I did not recognize parked at the curb. My wife's sister stepped out of the house just as I got out of mine. She gave me a polite smile and said they had been talking about something important. Her tone made my stomach tighten. I walked inside. My wife was sitting at the dining table, hands folded neatly in front of her. Emma was upstairs. The room felt staged, like a conversation had been rehearsed. She looked at me with concern, real concern, and then she asked a question I was not prepared for. She asked if I was happy. I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I did not know what the truth was anymore. And that was the first time the quiet hum turned into something I could not ignore. When she asked if I was happy, I gave the answer I had trained myself to give. Of course. It came out smooth, quick, efficient. She did not nod. She did not smile. She just kept looking at me like she was waiting for something else. Like she could sense the gap between the word and the truth behind it. She said I had been distant, that I seemed distracted, that even when I was home, it felt like I was somewhere else. I almost defended myself. I almost listed the hours I work, the bills I pay, the schedule I maintain. Instead, I stayed quiet, because she was not wrong. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again. I tried to trace back to the moment this feeling started. But the truth is, it did not start. It just slowly grew louder. The next morning, everything resumed its rhythm. Alarm at 6. Coffee at 6:10. Shower at 6:20. Tie at 6:35. Out the door by 6:45. Predictable. Structured. Secure. At work, I approved a hiring decision. Signed off on a budget increase. Sent 3 emails that could have been written by anyone in my position. My assistant complimented my efficiency. I felt like a machine that runs well. That afternoon, I received a call from my father. He wanted to congratulate me again on the expansion deal. He said he had always known I would build a life people respected. He said stability is rare, and I had achieved it. I thanked him. When the call ended, I stared at the dark screen of my phone. His approval still meant something to me. Maybe too much. On the drive home, I did something small. I took that different exit. Not far. Just one turn off my usual route. It led through an older part of town. Brick buildings. Faded murals. A small music store I used to visit in college. I parked. I told myself I was just stretching my legs. Inside the shop, guitars hung on the walls. Posters layered over each other near the counter. The place smelled like dust and wood polish. Behind the register, a kid in his 20s was sketching in a notebook between customers. I watched him for a moment. He looked focused, absorbed, alive. I did not buy anything. I did not say much. But when I got back in my car, the hum inside me was no longer background noise. It was a question, and I was finally starting to listen to it. The next morning, I did not tell anyone about the detour. I went back to my normal route. Same traffic, same radio host, same light that turns red just before the bridge. But now I knew there were other roads. That knowledge sat quietly in the back of my mind. At work, I tried to bury the question. I scheduled extra meetings, volunteered to review a proposal no one else wanted to touch, filled my calendar so tightly there was barely room to breathe. If I stayed productive enough, maybe the feeling would shrink back down. Instead, it followed me. During lunch, I found myself sketching on a napkin. Nothing elaborate, just shapes, letters layered over each other. I realized I had been doing it for several minutes before I stopped. I crumpled the napkin and threw it away like it was something embarrassing. That evening, Emma asked if I could help her finish her school poster. I sat beside her at the dining table. She colored the title while I carefully outlined the edges in black marker. She looked up at me and said she liked when I draw. I asked why. She shrugged and said it makes me look different. Different how? I asked. She said I look like I am there. That word stuck with me. Later that week, something unexpected happened. The firm announced a major restructuring. Not layoffs. Promotions. I was offered a larger role. More oversight. More responsibility. A clear path to senior partner within 2 years. 10 years ago, I would have celebrated without hesitation. Now, I felt my chest tighten. Everyone congratulated me before I had even formally accepted. Emails poured in. A few colleagues shook my hand and said I had earned it. My wife was thrilled when I told her. She hugged me and started talking about what this would mean for our future. Better schools, bigger vacations, earlier retirement. I nodded. But that night, sitting alone in the garage again, I opened the portfolio and realized something I had not admitted before. Every milestone I reached made my life more secure. And every milestone also made it harder to leave. The offer sat in my inbox, waiting for a response. I stared at the screen for a long time. For the first time in my life, the right choice felt heavy, and I did not know if I had the courage to choose anything else. I did not respond to the offer that night. I told myself I needed time to think, which was unusual for me. I am not someone who hesitates. I evaluate. I calculate. I decide. This felt different. The next day, my managing partner stopped by my office. He said the board was excited about my leadership potential. He said I represented the future of the firm. Steady, measured, reliable. That word again. Reliable. He mentioned the compensation package, the expanded bonus structure, equity, long-term security for my family. On paper, it was everything a responsible man should want. He asked if I had any concerns. I opened my mouth and almost said no. Instead, I heard myself ask what the travel expectations would be. How many additional hours? How much direct oversight? He smiled like those were good questions. Said it would be intense at first. Said leadership demands sacrifice. Sacrifice. I thought about Emma's drawing. About the blank face. About her saying I look different when I draw. That afternoon, I left work earlier than usual. No one stopped me. No one questioned it. I drove straight to the old part of town again. This time, I did not just stand in the music store. I walked in with purpose. I bought a sketchbook. Nothing fancy. Just thick paper and a plain black cover. When the kid at the counter handed me the receipt, he asked if I was starting something new. I almost laughed. I told him maybe. At home, I did not hide the sketchbook in the garage. I placed it on the kitchen counter. My wife noticed immediately. She asked what it was for. I told her I used to draw, that I thought I might start again. She looked surprised, but not upset, just confused. She said she did not know I missed that. I realized then that I had never told her. That night, instead of opening my laptop to review spreadsheets, I opened the sketchbook. The lines came slowly at first. Stiff, careful, then looser. I lost track of time again. For the first time in years, I was not thinking about the next milestone, not calculating the next move, just drawing. The promotion email still sat unanswered, but something else had shifted. For the first time, I was not asking what I was supposed to choose. I was starting to ask what I actually wanted. And that question felt more dangerous than any career risk I had ever avoided. The promotion deadline arrived on a Thursday. I stared at the email for most of the morning. Accepting would mean a bigger office, a larger team, longer hours, more visibility. It would also mean stepping fully into the identity I had been building for more than a decade. Declining would raise questions. Around noon, I walked to the break room and poured myself coffee I did not need. Two younger associates were talking about career goals. One of them said he hoped to have my life someday. The other nodded like that was the obvious benchmark. I almost turned around and told them something honest. That success can feel strangely hollow when it is not yours. But I did not. Instead, I went back to my office and closed the door. I opened a blank document and started typing reasons to accept the offer. Financial growth, stability, respect, opportunity. The list was long. Then I opened another document and typed reasons not to. The page stayed blank for a while. Finally, I wrote one sentence. I do not want it. I stared at those words. They looked childish, impulsive, unprofessional, but they were true. That afternoon, I stepped outside and called my wife. I told her I was still thinking about the promotion. She sounded surprised. She reminded me how much it would help us long term. She said most people would jump at the chance. She was right. That evening, Emma asked if I would come to her art show at school the following week. It was during business hours. I would need to block off my calendar. In the past, I would have checked first. This time, I said yes immediately. Later, sitting at the kitchen table with my sketchbook open, I realized something else. For years, I had believed there was only one kind of risk. The visible kind. The financial kind. But there is another kind. The risk of waking up 20 years from now and realizing you never once chose yourself. The next morning, I walked into my managing partner's office. He smiled, already assuming my answer. I thanked him for the offer. Then I told him I was declining. He blinked, asked if I was sure. I said yes. He asked if something was wrong. I said no. And that was the strangest part. Nothing was technically wrong. Everything made sense. But for the first time in my life, I chose something that did not. And I walked out of that office feeling terrified, and lighter than I have in years. The fallout was quieter than I expected. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. Just confusion. My managing partner asked if I was planning to leave the firm. I told him no. At least, not now. I just did not want that role. He studied me like I was speaking a foreign language. At home, my wife tried to understand. She asked if this was about stress, burnout. She offered solutions. Fewer hours. A short vacation. A therapist. I told her it was not that simple. Because how do you explain that you built a life that functions perfectly, yet does not feel like yours? Over the next few weeks, nothing on the surface changed. I still went to work. Still attended meetings. Still signed documents and approved budgets. But internally, I had stepped back. The firm continued forward without me in that higher role. Someone else accepted it. Everyone congratulated him. I watched from my chair and felt something unexpected. Relief. Emma's art show came on a Tuesday afternoon. The old version of me would have tried to squeeze it in between calls. This time, I blocked the entire afternoon. I stood in a crowded elementary school hallway, looking at paintings taped to bright construction paper. Messy brush strokes. Bold colors. Emma's piece was a self-portrait. Big smile. Wild hair. And beside her, another figure. Me. This time, I had a face. It was simple. 2 dots for eyes. A crooked line for a smile. But it was there. I felt something tighten in my chest. That evening, I did not open my laptop. I opened my sketchbook instead. The lines came easier now. I am not planning to quit my job tomorrow. I am not selling the house. I am not blowing up my life. That is not what this is. It is something quieter. A slow recognition. Nothing is broken. My marriage is steady. My career is respected. My home is secure. And yet, for years, I was living according to expectation, not identity. I mistook approval for alignment. Stability for fulfillment. Now, when I wake up before the alarm, the distance is not as sharp. It is still there sometimes. But I see it. I finally admit it. The life I built makes sense. It just is not the whole of who I am. And for the first time, I am no longer pretending that it is. I thought awareness would feel dramatic, like a switch flipping. It did not. It felt like walking through my own life with clearer eyes. The weeks after I declined the promotion were strange. Nothing collapsed. No doors slammed. My title stayed the same. My paycheck stayed the same. My responsibilities stayed manageable. But the way I moved through everything shifted. I stopped volunteering for extra projects that did not matter to me. I left the office on time more often. The first few evenings felt unnatural, like I was breaking an unspoken rule. No one stopped me. One night, I found myself sitting on the back patio after dinner. The lawn was trimmed, like always. The neighborhood quiet. Houses evenly spaced, porch lights glowing in perfect symmetry. It struck me how much of my life had been built around avoiding discomfort. I chose the stable career to avoid financial uncertainty. I chose the safe house to avoid risk. I chose the predictable schedule to avoid chaos. I had not built this life because it was wrong. I had built it because it was safe. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that safety and identity were the same thing. They are not. A few days later, my father called again. He had heard I turned down the promotion. Word travels quickly in circles like ours. He asked if I was making a mistake. I told him I did not think so. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said something I did not expect. He said he had once turned down an opportunity too. When he was younger. A move across the country. A different industry. Something less certain. He said he always wondered what might have happened. I had never heard him admit regret before. After the call, I sat with that. Maybe this path I followed was not just about expectation. Maybe it was inherited fear. That night, I told my wife something I had never said clearly. I told her I am not unhappy, but I have been incomplete. There is a difference. She listened. Really listened. She admitted she had built parts of her life on expectation too. The house size. The school district. The way we host dinners that look good in photos. We are not tearing it all down, but we are questioning it now. And that feels bigger than any promotion. I still go to work. I still pay the mortgage. I still wake up at 6. But I also draw. I also leave early sometimes. I also take different exits. The life I built is not a lie. It is just not the full truth. And the quiet hum that followed me for years. It is no longer a warning. It is a reminder that I am allowed to choose more than what makes sense. I am allowed to choose what feels like mine. There was no dramatic ending. No resignation letter. No shouting match. No sudden move across the country. That is what I used to think change had to look like. Instead, it looked like this. On a Saturday morning, I woke up before everyone else. The house was quiet. The sun had not fully risen yet. I walked into the kitchen and started the coffee like always. Same machine. Same mug. Same window overlooking the trimmed lawn. But I did not feel like I was watching someone else stand there. I felt present. Later that day, Emma asked if I would sit with her while she painted. We spread newspapers across the dining table. She worked fast and messy. I moved slower, more deliberate. At one point, she looked over at me and said, "You look different lately." I asked her how. She shrugged and said, "You smile more with your eyes." Kids say things like that without realizing how much weight they carry. That afternoon, I drove alone for a while. Not because I needed to escape, just because I wanted space to think. I passed the exit I used to take every single day, and then I passed it again. I kept driving. Not far, just long enough to feel the road curve somewhere unfamiliar. I realized something simple. For years, I believed I had two choices: stay safe or blow everything up. But that was never true. The real choice was smaller, quieter. Continue living on autopilot, or begin living awake. Nothing in my life is technically wrong. My marriage is intact. My career is stable. My home is comfortable. My parents are still proud. But I finally admit this. I built a life based on expectation. Now I am slowly learning to build parts of it based on identity. I do not know where it leads. Maybe I will stay at the firm for another 20 years. Maybe I will not. Maybe my sketches will remain a private ritual. Maybe they will become something more. The difference is this. I am no longer waiting for fulfillment to arrive after the next milestone. I am not postponing myself for some future version of success. I am here, in the quiet kitchen, in the messy pain on the table, in the small decisions that no one applauds. From the outside, my life still makes sense. People still respect me. My family is still proud. But now, when I look at my reflection in the glass of a conference room or the kitchen window at dawn, I see a face. It is not perfect. It is not heroic. It is not dramatically different. But it is mine.